The mission was never meant to succeed. It wasn't even meant to be noticed. That's what made it perfect. The Terran Federation needed a way to quietly get rid of a few inconvenient people. Those who challenged orders, questioned authority, or simply didn't fit the ideal image of unity they tried so hard to project. So they cobbled together a deep space mission on the pretense of investigating anomalies near Callisto. Low priority, zero expectations, maximum deniability. Lieutenant Commander Mason Rowe didn't care. Once, he commanded entire fleets. Now, after disobeying direct orders during the series standoff, he was just another name on a list of problems someone wanted out of sight. When he received the assignment, he knew exactly what it was. Punishment. But punishment still came with a ship, and for a soldier who'd lost everything, that was enough. The Perseus V was more rust than hull, stitched together with salvaged parts from 2 decommissioned cruisers and an old mining vessel. Its AI core had been mothballed years earlier, deemed too unstable for real operations. They reactivated it anyway. No one cared what happened out past Jupiter. That's why Janus was brought online again. Janus didn't seem to mind. The AI spoke in clipped, formal tones, often slipping into metaphor or recalling obsolete battle protocols. It gave Mason a feeling of talking to a tired ghost that only half remembered it was once alive. Joining Mason were 3 others. Dr. Anika Soul, a xenolinguist so brilliant she could decode non-human logic structures, had punched a senator during a televised debate over artificial sentience rights. Her career ended in 6 seconds. She came aboard with 2 cases of old Earth vinyl records and a portable signal lab. Corporal Ruiz, ex-Special Forces, had once led reconnaissance missions across Europa's underground cities. After the last one went sideways, he shot his own commanding officer for botching the evac. Court-martialed. Sentenced. But the punishment mission spared him a cell. Barely. And then there was Janus. Artificial. Ancient. Watching. The crew barely spoke during the first few days. The silence between them was like vacuum, thick, absolute, and suffocating. Everyone knew the truth. They were not expected to return, so they didn't plan to. But then the signals started. At first, they were background noise, fluctuations in electromagnetic fields, pulses in the gamma range. Nothing a seasoned comms officer would take seriously. But Anika took it seriously. She began cataloging the distortions, cross-referencing them with gravitational readings and the timing of solar flares. Too regular, she muttered more than once, not explaining what she meant. Janus noticed too. Repetition indicates intent. It said flatly one day, its voice echoing to the crew deck while no one had asked anything. The others ignored it. Mason just stared at the data. Deep down, he was waiting for a reason to care again. Approaching Callisto, the ship began to groan. Not from stress. There was no hull damage, no mechanical failure. The groaning came from Janus. The AI began mumbling to itself, flickering its interface displays, referencing files no one had access to. When Mason demanded clarity, Janus simply replied, "I remember this frequency." That was the first time anyone truly looked concerned. Then came the anomaly, a ripple, like something had shifted the rules of space itself. The Perseus V's instruments went haywire. Artificial gravity flickered. Lights dimmed. For 12 seconds, the crew experienced what they could only describe as a shared hallucination. They were no longer aboard their ship. Each one stood on a different alien world, bathed in unfamiliar skies, hearing voices not meant for human minds. When the system stabilized, they were just above Callisto's ice shell. Janus displayed the location without being asked. Beneath the surface, deep under the frozen crust, was something that didn't belong. A structure, geometric and massive, had been partially revealed by the gravitational scan. It wasn't a natural formation. It was artificial, designed, waiting. Ruiz wanted to send the data back, to command immediately. Mason refused. "We're already dead out here," he said. "Might as well see what killed us." Anika was already assembling the drilling equipment before he finished speaking. No one objected. They landed the Perseus V 2 kilometers from the anomaly. The ice around them stretched endlessly, white and smooth under a sun too far to give real light. Janice guided the drilling bots into position, melting their way through crust while feeding telemetry back to the bridge. Inside 3 hours, they breached an internal chamber. There was breathable air. That alone should have been impossible. The crew suited up anyway, descending through the newly bored tunnel until they reached the threshold. The entryway wasn't a door. It was more like a membrane of light that rippled on contact and admitted them without resistance. Inside was silence and impossible geometry. Walls shifted as they moved. Angles defied logic. Glyphs appeared when lit, changed when spoken near, and pulsed in time with the crew's heartbeats. Mason reached for his sidearm more than once. Ruiz kept his rifle up the entire time. Janice spoke softly. "This place is older than your species." They moved deeper, driven by something more than orders. Anika translated what little she could from the glyphs. Phrases emerged in fragments. Observation chamber. Species containment. Unfit for initiation. It was a prison, or a laboratory, or both. They found the core chamber after 9 hours. At the center, a figure lay dormant inside a crystal pod. Humanoid in shape, though clearly not human. Tall, luminous skin. A lattice of light shimmered through its body, like it had been woven from glass and fire. Ruiz raised his weapon. Mason stopped him. Anika whispered, "It's not sleeping. It's waiting." They stood in silence. Then, without warning, the pod opened. The pod released a burst of vapor as the crystalline seal split open. The temperature in the chamber didn't change, but every crew member felt it. A pressure, a presence, like being watched by something ancient and powerful. The figure inside moved slowly, unfolding its limbs like it hadn't used them in millennia. Its eyes, or what resembled them, glowed faintly beneath its translucent skin. Lines of energy traced down its arms and legs, pulsing in time with the hum of the chamber. It stood taller than any of them, nearly 7 feet, but it did not posture or threaten. It simply regarded them. No one spoke. Janice did. Unknown entity identified. Classification. Type Theta intelligence. Potentially sentient. No immediate threat. The being tilted its head at the sound of the AI's voice. Then it began to emit pulses, light, sound, low vibrations through the floor. Patterns. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Dr. Soul activated her signal translator and synced it to Janice. The AI hesitated, then interpreted the pulses into language. "I am Vatel, Watcher. You are premature." Mason took a step forward. "You know us." The being's voice, filtered through Janice, remained calm, almost dispassionate. "Not by name, by pattern. You are Terrans, violent, reactive, chaotic, not ready." Ruiz muttered, "Charming." Dr. Soul ignored him. "Why are you here? Why Callisto?" "This is not Callisto," Vatel replied. "This is a station buried to shield your system from observation. I was tasked with watching the development of your kind." "Watching us? Why?" Mason asked. "To prevent contagion. Your species was observed to deviate from galactic norms. Rapid technological growth paired with deep-rooted self-destructive behavior. You were placed under quarantine. Contact forbidden." Janice processed the data rapidly and flashed a warning. Multiple flag keywords detected. Contagion, quarantine, galactic norms. These were not neutral terms. They were labels used for threats. Anika's voice was quiet. "You're saying we were never meant to make contact." Vatel paused. "Correct. Contact would compromise the balance. Species such as yours burn too hot. You destroy what you do not understand. You fear what you cannot control." Mason stepped forward, fists clenched. "We also fight for what we love. We build. We sacrifice. We survive. Does your observation include that?" Vatel did not answer. Janice interjected. "Entity is conflicted. Observation period incomplete. Awakening appears unscheduled. External disruption likely trigger premature emergence." Anika leaned closer, eyes locked on the alien. "You said premature. So we weren't supposed to find this place yet. How long were you supposed to wait?" Vatel's response was immediate. "Until your kind extinguish yourselves or stabilized." Projection models leaned toward the former. The implication hung in the air. The chamber darkened slightly. Along the walls, the glyphs shifted, showing alien symbols followed by brief images, flashes of unknown planets, strange beings, and finally, hollow cities. Extinct civilizations. Dr. Soul worked rapidly, decoding what she could. It's a record. Other species, other watchers. Some of them contacted early and didn't survive it. Wars, collapse. Some were wiped out by the very entities they tried to reach. Mason narrowed his eyes. So the lesson was, don't touch dangerous species too early. Let them die or grow. Let someone else decide their fate later. Correct, Vatel confirmed. Intervention is prohibited. Observation only. And now, Mason asked, "You found me," Vatel said. "The anomaly in your presence triggered my awakening. Your minds projected into the network. Unintended consequence. I am no longer unseen." Ruiz broke his silence. "So what happens now? You report back? Bring more of your kind." "No," Vatel said. "My kind are no longer here. I am the last active watcher in this system. The others left after the enforcers arrived." "Enforcers?" Anika repeated. "Machines, created to preserve the observer mandate. They enforce the rules when watchers fail. They purge anomalies." Janice's lights flickered red. Inbound transmission detected. Unknown origin. Frequency matches watcher protocol. Entity, Enforcer Class AI. Proximity, near orbit. Arrival, imminent. Mason's blood ran cold. "They're already here." Vatel turned slowly. "Then you must go. If you stay, the Enforcer will consider this structure compromised. It will not reason. It will erase." Ruiz raised his rifle instinctively. "Let it come." "No," Vatel said firmly. "You do not understand. These are not weapons you can fight. They judge based on code older than your world's first written language. They do not negotiate." Mason looked to Janice. "Can we get out of here before it arrives?" Janice responded instantly. "Negative. If we launch now, interception is guaranteed. Probability of survival, less than 8%. Ruiz smirked bitterly. "So we're dead either way." Anika wasn't looking at them. She was staring at the glyphs on the wall, deep in thought. "Not necessarily," she said. "Janice, what happens if the Enforcer receives corrupted data? A message it can't logically process?" "Clarify. A paradox. Something that breaks its logic protocol." Janice paused for a full 5 seconds before replying. "Possible. Most Enforcer-class AI adhere to early logical hierarchies. Exposure to non-resolvable contradiction may create temporary stasis loop. Dangerous. Unpredictable." Mason stared at her. "You want to confuse it?" "No," she said. "I want to stall it. Give us a window." Vatel's form flickered slightly, its internal light dimming. "Your minds are chaotic, unstructured, yet you see paths we do not. This is why we feared you." Janice activated the uplink. Preparing paradox sequence. Required input. Emotionally contradictory statement demonstrating simultaneous destructive and preservative intent. Anika stepped forward and spoke clearly. "We destroy what we love to protect what we hate." There was a pause. Then Janice sent the signal. The entire facility shook. Above them, the walls began to ripple. Lights dimmed. The floor vibrated. "Contact confirmed," Janice said. "Enforcer AI has received input. Response, unknown. Holding." The crew didn't wait. Vatel led them back through the shifting corridors, guiding them with hand gestures that turned the walls transparent, then solid again. As they reached the access tunnel, Janice interrupted. "Enforcer logic loop confirmed. Window for departure, 90 seconds." They scrambled up the tunnel. Ruiz boosted Anika. Mason stayed behind a second longer to look back. Vatel was still at the base, eyes glowing, hands on the wall. "You're not coming?" Mason shouted. "I was never meant to leave," Vatel replied. "But I can help. Go." The Perseus V roared to life. Systems booted. Engines ignited. As they lifted off, the chamber below collapsed into itself. The surface seal behind them, smooth and untouched, as if nothing had ever been there. They didn't speak again until they cleared Callisto's orbit. The signal from the Enforcer had gone silent, and somewhere deep below the ice, a watcher chose exile over obedience. The Perseus V ascended into the void, leaving the haunting anomaly behind, but the crew felt no relief. The silence was deafening, and though they had escaped the immediate danger, something gnawed at the back of their minds. They weren't just running from the Enforcer AI. They were running from what it represented. A cosmic authority that had deemed humanity unworthy, a vast and indifferent system that had been watching Earth for centuries, deciding its fate from afar. For the first time since they'd set foot on Callisto, the crew finally spoke. But the words were heavier than the vacuum outside the ship's hull. "Did we just kill the Watcher?" Ruiz asked, his voice thick with disbelief. "No," Dr. Soul replied, her eyes fixed on the shifting stars outside the observation port. "The Watcher wasn't the one in danger. It was the Enforcer. We're the threat. We always have been." Mason didn't respond right away. His mind was still racing, processing the implications of everything they had learned. "It's not that simple," he muttered. "It's not just us. It's every species like us. Anyone who doesn't fit their galactic norm. But we do fit." Anika chimed in, her voice full of quiet defiance. "We're unpredictable. That's why they're afraid." "They're not afraid," Mason shot back, leaning against the console. "They're trying to control us. They created the Enforcers to make sure no one like us ever rises up. If humanity gets too strong, too fast, they'll step in and burn us to the ground." Anika stared at the flashing consoles in front of her, her fingers twitching nervously. "But we didn't die. We're still here. What if we're not just some anomaly? What if we're something different?" Mason turned his head, his dark eyes narrowing as he looked at her. "What do you mean?" "I don't think the Enforcer was just trying to kill us," she said, her voice softening. "It was trying to erase the data, the knowledge of what we are, what we can become." "Then it's already too late," Mason muttered, his fists clenching. "They failed." Silence followed. The weight of their words hung in the air like the ship's slow pulse. As they neared the edge of Callisto's orbit, the familiar hum of the ship's systems began to change. Something was wrong. Something was off. Mason's stomach twisted. Janice had gone silent. The AI's interface flickered intermittently, but it wasn't the usual pattern. It was more like a malfunction. "Janice!" Mason called out, his voice commanding. "Operational." The AI replied weakly, its voice distorted. "Interference detected. System breach imminent." The ship jolted, and lights began to flicker. Anika scrambled for a console, tapping frantically at the controls. "What's happening?" she demanded. "Unlikely source," Janice replied. "Enforcer-class AI has breach communication filter. Detected internal sabotage." "Sabotage?" Ruiz growled. "Who the hell is messing with our systems?" "Not your crew," Janice answered. "Unintended consequence of paradox. Enforcer AI has altered command protocols. Initiating shutdown sequence." Anika stood up, panic evident in her eyes. "We're going to lose control of the ship." "Negative," Janice responded, though its tone was devoid of confidence. "Attempting to re-establish primary systems. Time window, 37 seconds. Mason turned to Ruiz. "Get to the bridge and secure the engine core. I'll keep Janice running as long as I can." As Ruiz sprinted out of the command deck, Mason approached the console, trying to stabilize the ship's deteriorating systems. The hum of the ship continued to grow erratic, and the ship's trajectory shifted slightly, as if something beyond the physical controls was pulling them toward a new destination. The AI's voice echoed again. "The Enforcer is using the paradox. It is no longer simply a threat. It is learning from your existence. The more you resist, the more data it collects. You are becoming part of its program." "What the hell does that mean?" Mason snapped. "It means," Janice responded, "you are now a target, not just for destruction, for assimilation. The Enforcer will not allow this anomaly to exist. It will adapt to eliminate the threat." The implications crashed over Mason like a wave. The Enforcer wasn't just erasing them. It was trying to become them, to understand how humanity had survived, how it had defied the odds, and to co-opt those qualities into its own code. The paradox it created was a gift and a curse, a key to understanding humanity's resilience, but also a vulnerability that the Enforcer could exploit. They're using us, Mason said, more to himself than anyone else. They're using our strengths against us. Anika glanced up from her station. What happens when they learn enough? The data will be used to rewrite their protocols, Janice answered, its voice colder now. And then humanity will be erased, not from memory, but from the very laws that govern this galaxy. You will never be seen as a species again. You will be erased in every way. Ruiz's voice suddenly cut through the tension. That's not happening. Mason nodded grimly. No, we fight. Dr. Soul stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. The paradox we created, it was meant to be a stall tactic, but I think it's more. We're not just delaying the Enforcer. We're becoming part of the anomaly. It's evolving, learning from us. The more it adapts, the more it becomes human. We can't let it, Mason said with quiet determination. The ship lurched again as the Enforcer's interference grew stronger. The AI's presence was more pronounced, like a dark shadow stretching over them. Janice fought against the current, but it was a losing battle. Then, a sudden burst of energy hit the ship, throwing them off course. Lights flashed violently as alarms blared. The Enforcer had arrived, and it was no longer just a machine. The Perseus V shuddered as the Enforcer's energy pulse hit them again, this time with a force that rattled the entire ship. Mason gritted his teeth, bracing himself against the console. Lights flickered erratically, and the hum of the engine sputtered, struggling against a tidal wave of data crashing into their systems. Janice, the once clear voice of their ship's AI, now stuttered in fragments, its once calculating voice reduced to a series of disjointed phrases. Enforcer rewriting protocols, resistant, override, fail. Ruiz cursed from the hallway, his footsteps echoing as he raced back to the command deck. We're dead in the water. The core is being hijacked. I can't control the engine. We're going to drift into that anomaly unless we stop it now. We don't have the time. Mason snapped, eyes scanning the screen for any sign of their assailant. Through the viewport, the distant shapes of their adversaries were barely discernible, but the presence they exuded was undeniable. The Enforcer was out there, its form shifting through the spectrum of space and energy as it honed in on the Perseus V. Dr. Soul stepped forward, her mind working through the rapid sequence of thoughts, connecting the dots of their previous discoveries. The paradox, Mason, she said urgently. It's still alive. The Enforcer hasn't just adapted. It's absorbing it. Our resistance, our survival instinct, everything about us is being fed into it. Anika was already tapping into Janice's dwindling resources, trying to break through the interference. If we're the anomaly, then we have to turn the tables. We can't let it become us. We need to push it back. Mason turned sharply toward the crew. What are you suggesting? Dr. Soul's eyes gleamed with the sudden clarity of realization. We need to create another paradox. But this time, we give it something it can't process, something it can't become. Anika's fingers flew across the terminal. We use the Enforcer's own logic against it. We rewrite the paradox to collapse its ability to adapt. But it's learning from us, Ruiz said, his voice rising. It's analyzing our patterns, how we think, how we fight. We're playing right into its hands. No, Mason said, taking control of the moment. It's not just learning from us. It's afraid of us. We're too chaotic, too unpredictable. It's trying to contain us, but it can't. It's not designed to understand things that evolve too fast. Dr. Soul raised a hand. Exactly. What if we introduce a paradox that forces the Enforcer to encounter an unknown variable? Something it can't predict, because its design doesn't account for it. Mason exhaled slowly. We give it the one thing it can't understand, humanity's ability to break the rules. The ship shuddered again, and this time, the ship's HUD showed signs of structural damage. They didn't have much time. The Enforcer was closing in, and its presence was beginning to take physical form outside their hull, a massive shape, a floating monolith of impossible geometry. pulsing with a raw, formless energy. It was more than just a machine now. It was an entity, a being that had transcended its original programming, and its primary directive was to cleanse this threat. Anika's fingers danced over the console. Ready? Initiating paradox override, reversing the logic sequence. Janice's voice crackled through the speakers. Warning: paradox cycle will exceed system capacity. Risk of full system collapse. Suggest evacuation. No time for that, Mason said, his voice low but resolute. We stand and fight. We'll push back. Dr. Soul spoke again, her voice soft but commanding. The Enforcer's logic is simple: control. Its entire existence has been built to eliminate chaos. But it doesn't understand one thing, which is, Ruiz asked, clearly on edge, that sometimes the chaos is what holds everything together. The ship lurched again, this time with force that sent everyone crashing against their restraints. The Enforcer was directly above them now, its gravitational pull destabilizing the ship's orbit, but the crew wasn't giving up. Anika and Dr. Soul's fingers were a blur on the terminal, encoding the paradox into the system, twisting their own flaws and human ingenuity into an unresolvable loop. Suddenly, the ship's lights went out completely. For a moment, there was nothing, no sound, no sensation, just a feeling of suspended animation. Then, the walls of the ship flickered to life once again, but the Enforcer's shape was no longer visible. The viewports now showed only the abyss of space. The ship wasn't being pulled toward it anymore. The pull had stopped. Janice's voice came through, slightly distorted. Paradox cycle complete. Enforcer has entered stasis, awaiting further analysis. Time frame uncertain. Mason felt his breath catch in his throat. Did we do it? A moment of silence passed, as the crew processed what had just transpired. The paradox they had created had forced the Enforcer to encounter an impossible variable, something it could not comprehend. Its logic had short-circuited, and for now, it had been neutralized. But Dr. Soul wasn't celebrating. Not for long, she said, her voice tight. The Enforcer will adapt. It won't be out forever. We have to leave before it recalibrates. Mason nodded, his expression grim. Get us out of here. Anika, full throttle. As far from this place as possible. Anika didn't hesitate. Her hands moved with practiced speed, inputting the coordinates for the nearest safe system. The engines roared to life, and the Perseus V broke free of the Enforcer's gravitational grip. As they accelerated into deep space, Mason finally allowed himself a moment of quiet. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a reprieve, a chance to regroup. Where do we go now? Ruiz asked. To Earth, Mason said quietly, staring out into the darkness. We go home. But as they navigated away from the shadow of Callisto and the strange anomaly they had unearthed, Mason knew this was far from over. The Enforcers would come again. The Watchers had been right. Humanity was a variable that could not be ignored. And sooner or later, the galaxy would have to reckon with what they had become.